Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Welcome to Snowflake Corner, episode 68, where we cover news from outside the UK. The date and time of this live stream is the 3rd of June 2025 at 6 p.m. UK time. We are dual streaming live on youtube.com/Reganelite and on twitch.tv/Reganelite1. If you're on either one of those programs, feel free to say hello in the live chat. If you're on Twitch, make sure you hit the follow button and hit the bell notification icon. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button if you can for me and hit that subscribe and the bell notification icon to be notified of when I go live on there as well. Hope you're all doing well. We've got 5 stories to cover here today. One very fascinating one from Al Jazeera that I'm very keen to dive into as well. We also have one funny video that I listened to already, and it's very, very good. So we'll definitely get a laugh out of that. And we, of course, one of the things part of the Snowflake Corner is the funny memes, of course. So do stick around to the end of the show for the funny memes. I've got some really good ones this time around, guys, because I know some people have some questionable questions about some of the memes, but don't worry, they will be worth the wait, guys. So let's get started. So the first story we're going to is in America, and it is from the Associated Press, guys. So the headline is the Republicans are pushing for proof of citizenship to vote proves a tough sell in the state. So one of the things that the Republicans and the MAGA movement really want to do is really want to suppress voters, and they really want to make it as difficult as possible to vote. And not only that, it's even going to push down on a lot of Republican voters as well, because there will be Republican voters who will miss out on voting if they do move down this path, especially in many red states. It's already very hard for them to do so. Now, they really want to emphasize that non-citizens should not have the right to vote. In some states, it is banned outright. And they basically, they want to get it to a point where they look like they're going to, based off the article, is that they want to get to a point where unless you have a citizenship that proves that you are indeed a US citizen, that you can vote. Like that's how deep we're going here. I mean, it's so terrible, like just how difficult it is for Americans to vote. And I generally think if there was not voter suppression, I think so many more people would have been able to vote. Not only so many people would have been able to vote, that maybe, just maybe, Kamala Harris may have won the last US election. If there wasn't so much voter suppression, if it wasn't so difficult for people to be able to register to vote, to be able to vote, like the barriers that are put in front of people already is going to be hard. And they are still going to have elections, but how free and fair these elections will be is questionable. And I do question the free and fairmality of this now, because now of this Trump administration, because one thing Donald Trump will want to do is hold on to that power. He will not want to let it go in any way, shape or form. So the next round of elections are definitely going to be interesting to say the least, but I can certainly see the Republicans trying to swing it as much as they possibly can in their favor. And it really is like the last presidential election really was a do or die situation for them. And it just didn't turn out. It just didn't go the way they wanted them to. It really didn't, unfortunately, guys. So let's have a read a bit into this as I share my thoughts. So President Donald Trump and congressional Republicans have made it a priority this year to require people to prove their citizenship before they can register to vote. Turning that aspiration into reality has proven difficult. So Trump's executive order directing a documentary proof of citizenship requirement, for federal elections has been blocked by a judge. While federal legislation to accomplish it doesn't appear to have the votes to pass in the Senate. And at that same time, state-level efforts have found little success, even in places where Republicans control the legislature and governor's office. So they're really trying hard to, I think it's very, very fair to say that they are really trying hard to really clamp down, to really make this, I just want to sort this camera out because for some reason I'm very, very on the left there. They're really trying to clamp down on non-people without all the documentation they need. They're really trying to clamp down on that, to make it very difficult for people. The most recent state efforts to falter is in Texas, where a Senate bill failed to gain full legislative approval before lawmakers adjourned on Monday. The Texas bill was one of the nation's most sweeping proof of citizenship proposals because it would have applied not only to new registrants, but also to states' roughly 18.6 million registered voters. The bill authors failed spectacularly to explain how this bill would be implemented and how it would be able to be implemented without inconvening a ton of voters, said Anthony Gutierrez, director of voting rights group Common Cause Texas. Voting by a non-citizen is already illegal and punishable as a felony, potentially leading to deportation. But Trump and his allies have pressed for a proof of citizenship mandate by arguing it would improve public confidence in elections. Well, is it like it's already, like I said, it's already difficult enough. Like, how is that proving public confidence? This is the path they want us to go down in the UK as well. So before his win last year, Trump falsely claimed non-citizens might vote in large enough numbers to sway the outcome. Although non-citizen voting does occur, research and reviews of state cases have shown it to be rare and more often a mistake. Voting rights groups said the various proposals seeking to acquire proof of citizenship are overly burdensome and threatens to disenfranchise millions of Americans. Many do not have easy access to their birth certificates, have not gotten a US passport, or have a name that no longer matches the one on their birth certificate, such as a woman who changed her last name when they married. The number of states considering bills related to proof of citizenship for voting tripled from 2023 to this year, said Liz Avels, a senior policy advisor with the Voting Rights Lab, an advocacy group that tracks election legislation in the states. And that hasn't resulted in many new laws, at least so far. Republicans in Wyoming passed their own proof of citizenship legislation, but similar measures have stalled or failed in multiple GOP-led states, including Florida, Missouri, Texas, and Utah. A proposal remains active in Idaho, although Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican, has said he doesn't want to sign any more bills that make it harder to vote. In Texas, the legislation swiftly passed the state Senate after it was introduced in March, but it never made to the floor in the House. It was unclear why legislation was such a priority for Senate Republicans. Every one of them co-authored the bill, ending up faltering. I just think people realize, as flawed as this playbook has been in other states, Texas didn't need to make this mistake, said Republican John Bussey, a Democrat who serves as vice chair of the House Elections Committee. Bussey points to specific concerns about married women who changed their last names. This surfaced in local elections earlier this year in New Hampshire, which passed a proof of citizenship requirement last year. And this is the thing: when marriages come about, people change their surnames, and it should be very easy for people to be able to change their surnames when they need to. There should not be it should not be a cost effect to it, but obviously there is a cost effect to it in everything. But also when it comes to them being able to vote as well. Other states have previously sought to add such a requirement, has faced lawsuits and complications when trying to implement it. So in Arizona, a state audit found that problems with the way data was handled had affected the tracking and verification of residents' citizenship status. And it came after officials had identified some 200,000 voters who thought they had provided a proof of their citizenship, but had not. A proof of citizenship requirement was in effect for 3 years in Kansas before it was overturned by the federal courts. The state's own experts estimate that almost all of the roughly 30,000 people who were prevented from registering to vote while it was in effect were US citizens who otherwise had been eligible. So yeah, they've tried this again, but it got overturned by the courts. Because the thing is that they're trying so hard to undermine anywhere they can. How far can we push the courts into making life as difficult as we can to getting people to vote? Like anyone who, like, they really are trying to target and make it very difficult, almost next to impossible for people to vote. In Missouri, legislation seeking to add proof of citizenship requirement cleared a Senate committee, but never came to a vote in a Republican-led chamber. Republican State Senator Ben Brown has promoted the legislation as a follow-up to a constitutional amendment stating that only U.S. citizens can vote, which Missouri voters overwhelmingly approved last November. He said there were several factors that led to the bill not advancing this year. Due to the session's limited schedule, he chose to prioritise another elections bill banning foreign contributions in state ballot measures campaigns. Quote, our legislation session ending mid-May means a lot of things die at the fishing line because you simply run out of time, Brown said. Note he also took time to research concerns raised by local election officials and plans to reintroduce the proof of citizenship bill next year. So yeah, they really want to keep non-citizens out of it. So the Republican-controlled legislature in Utah is also prioritizing other election changes, adding that voter ID requirements and requiring people to opt in to receive their ballots in the mail before Governor Spencer Cox signs the bill into law. Utah was the only Republican-controlled state that allows all elections to be conducted by mail without a need to opt in. Under the Florida bill that has failed to advance voter registration applications wouldn't be considered valid until state officials have verified citizenship, either by confirming a previous voting history, checking the applicant's status in state and federal databases, or verifying documents that they provided. The bill would have required voters to prove their citizenship even when updating their registration to change their address or party affiliation. And its sponsor, the Republican State Representative Jenna Persons Malicia, said it was meant to follow the full follow-through on Trump's executive order. The bill fully answers the president's call, she said. Well, it hasn't, has it? All this talk about wanting to make it more difficult for voting. Luckily, the courts are at the moment helping out. They are helping out in this situation. Thank the Lord. But at the moment, it's already very difficult, right? As it is, like it's already very difficult. But they want to make it more difficult. And to be fair, we see this coming. We see this coming a mile away down the line. Before even Trump took office, when he won the election, we knew that it was going to be near and next impossible for the Dems to come back in anyway. I mean, at the moment, they're still in chaos because we don't even know who's running the show. Who's really going to step up to the plate? I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's AOC. Because she's not been given the powers to do so. But even if there was no changes to the voting system in any of the states between now and the next two elections, at the moment, I can't see anything changing. Even if they crash the economy, even if they make lives worse, people will still vote Republican no matter how bad things get. Because of it's a culture thing. To some of them, it's an absolute culture thing, and it's absolutely tragedy that it's happening. So many Americans are going to suffer as a result. It's really, really tragic. So the next story I want to share with you guys, you're going to see an explosion in the video, but don't worry, no one gets hurt in any of it. Yeah, I'm just gonna warn you now anyway. From CNN here. So the headline is. Yeah, I'll show you the explosion in a second. Ukraine strikes bridge connecting Russia to Crimea with underwater explosives. So this video that is playing over and over again because it won't stop playing over and over again. It says that Ukraine said it struck a bridge connecting Crimea to with underwater explosives. So this is quite obviously. I would have liked it if they had blown the bridge up instead, rather than blowing under. But still. It's still damaged nonetheless to Russia. It's still concerning. The bridge has already reopened, my understanding from what I've already read already. So even though they struck the Crimean bridge underwater, it hasn't really damaged the bridge enough to stop military and vehicles driving along that bridge. I mean, it really would be beneficial if they could sabotage that bridge, because that is still it's still a supply line that Russia does use from Russia into Crimea, and then from Crimea obviously into Ukraine's territories there where the war continues. But it's still a sign that they can still hit that bridge if they really want to. There, it is that sign still. So Ukraine said on Tuesday it hit the bridge connecting Russia and the occupied Crimean Peninsula with explosives planted underwater in its third attack on the vital supply line for Moscow forces since the full-scale war began in 2022. So Ukraine's secret service, the SBU, said on Telegram that its agents had mined the piers of the road and rail Crimean Bridge, also called the Kursk Bridge, and detonated the first explosives at 4:44 a.m. on Tuesday morning. The whole operation took several months, it added. The agency said it had used 1,100 kilograms of explosives, which severely damaged the underwater pillars supporting the bridge. Traffic on the bridge was suspended early Tuesday morning and then again mid-afternoon before resuming shortly before 6 p.m. local time. Although the scale of the damage was not immediately clear, Tuesday's attack is the latest example of the SBU's attempts to blindside Moscow and demonstrate that there are costs to continuing the war. Yeah, so see, they have already reopened the bridge. So, like, obviously, I don't want to see any casualties whatsoever, but the fact that they struck the bridge from here. And we know that they obviously, Russia owns that side, and then there's Crimea, and then they've obviously they pretty much control most of this sea area here. So the fact that they were still able to get all the way here to damage the bridge is still quite significant. It's just it's just actual shame that they weren't able to really blow the bridge, to really cut off that supply line. Are they planning to build another bridge? Are they planning to build another supply line? It would not surprise me one bit if Russia were planning to build another supply line. Yeah, because they are, because it is still strategically militarily important. I mean, I know in terms of the territory, they have quite significant gains already in Donetsk, Metropole, Silverdoskis there, but still, they still get lots of supplies across that Kerch bridge there. So on Sunday, the SBU launched an audacious drone attack on Moscow's fleet of nuclear-capable bombers, stationed at various Russian airfields thousands of miles away from Ukraine. Vosk Malug, the head of the SBU, said that attack caused an estimated $7 billion in damages and has struck 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missile carriers, which have been used to pummel Ukrainian cities throughout the war. The SBU said that Mulux has also overseen Tuesday's attack. God loves the Trinity, and the SBU always sees things through to the end and then never does the same thing twice. We previously struck the Crimean bridge twice in 2022 and 2023, so today we're continuing this tradition, this time underwater, Mulux has said. He stressed that the bridge is a completely legitimate target since Russia uses it as logistical artery to supply its troops fighting in mainland Ukraine. As well as serving as vital supplies for Moscow's troops, the Crimean bridge also has huge symbolic value for President Vladimir Putin, embodying his objective to bind the Ukrainian peninsula to Russia. Built after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, Putin opened the bridge in 2018. The project cost around $3.7 billion there. This is an image released by the SBU showing the damage to the Crimean bridge. Yeah, it's not that significant there. I mean, it's not that significant. Tuesday's attacks marks the third time that Ukraine has targeted the bridge since Moscow's full-scale invasion in October 2022. In October, yeah, it was October that year. For some reason, I was thinking of a different date. You know why? It's because it's because I think of October the 7th all the time, guys. That's the problem. A fuel truck exploded on the bridge, engulfing a part of it in flames. In July 2023, the SBU said it had blown up a part of the bridge using an experimental sea drone. Both times, Russia moved quickly to repair the damaged sections. As well as suspending traffic on the bridge, Russian authorities temporarily halted maritime traffic in the water off Sevastopol, the largest city in Crimea, according to state media RIA Novosti. I mean, it is pretty huge. Obviously it's still a significant damage to say, but again, like for me, it's like as something that they've been planning for months here. It's not really something that's going to hurt the Russians. Like to me, I look at it and it's just like, yeah, that's great. Like I'm really happy. Like great, because we want Ukraine obviously to fight back, and obviously they're doing things like this. But is it a difference maker? Is it game changer? Not really. Like if they have sabotaged the bridge, that would have been quite huge. That would have been a big strike to say. That would be a big saying to Russia and Ukraine and Putin. It's like, yeah, we can still hurt you. I mean, don't get me wrong. The drone attacks they did a few days ago deep inside Russia were still significant. But I've always thought that if they could take out that bridge, it really would send a massive message, considering that they had that bridge built since he annexed the Crimean Peninsula. I genuinely think that should be the better thing that they should be doing there is taking out that bridge. But I don't know when this ceasefire is going to ever happen, or if we ever going to get one at the moment, because Putin's not planning on changing anything anytime soon, sadly, guys. And that's the other thing as well. So the next story I've got for you guys is a very interesting explainer here. This one is from Al Jazeera. Very interested into reading this one here. So the headline is, why are humanitarian crises in African countries so ignored? The latest, most neglected crisis reports on the world's most invisible humanitarian emergency lists African nations first. Is anyone surprised by this? I'm generally not. I don't think anyone else should be. Is it because of discrimination? Yes. I do think a bit of discrimination has to play a part in this as well. It's not something that the world media talks enough about what's happening in Africa. Doesn't talk about enough about the conflicts that are taking place. There's so many other so many conflicts taking place in Africa that there's a lot of them that I have never even covered on my channel because there's so many. But if I'm bombarded with nothing but conflicts in Africa, it would be very, very demoralizing and depressing. So that's why I don't do. But this explainer really does remind you just like how bad things are on the continent as a whole. So African countries have again topped the list for the world's most ignored crises, with nearly all of the worst funded humanitarian challenges located in the continent in 2024, according to a new study out this week. Released today, Tuesday, the report by the non-profit Norwegian Refugee Council, the NRC, lists Cameroon, Mozambique, and a host of other African nations as some of the most burdened by violence and displacement, but also the most invisible to donors. The news comes as the United States, formerly the world's biggest aid provider, massively cut development funding this year. Aid agencies received only about half of what they needed in 2024, and experts say further shrinking aid will likely make 2025 even more bleak for people in need. 8 African emergencies were previously ranked as the most ignored in 2023 as well. So the report says that millions of people who have been displaced or face food insecurity or lack shelter are receiving little aid because of donor fatigue, poor media coverage, and little to no political resolution, according to the NRC's 2024 Most Neglected Crisis Report. So the report divides countries in crises that have hosted or have had more than 200,000 displaced people, and which have been declared to be severe crisis emergencies. Of 34 countries analysed, the most invisible, according to the NRC report, was Cameroon, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Burkina Faso, Mali, Uganda, Iran, Democratic Republic of Congo, Honduras, and Somalia. Now, obviously, it's from the most analysed there, and Iran seems to be on there as well. So, aside from funding, there was little progress on efforts at conflict resolution, disaster prevention, and diplomatic engagements in all the affected countries, the report added. In general, aid funding dropped overall in 2024, the NRC had noted. The shortfall between what was required to meet humanitarian needs in 2024 and what was delivered was a staggering $25 billion, meaning half of all needs went unmet, the report stated. And this is what happens when you cut foreign aid. Not just in America, but any other countries that do so as well. £25 billion would have helped met those needs. So why are African humanitarian emergencies ignored? Because people don't care. Because they don't care, that's why. Good evening, Vicky. Good to see you there in the chat. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, best thing to do is turn off your notifications and turn them back on. That's probably what it is. That's probably the reason why. But good to see someone in the chat. Hope you're doing well. So donor fatigue and growing waves of nationalistic politics within traditional donor countries are causing the richest countries to reduce foreign aid funding, experts say. A lack of proximities to emergency analysis has added and also affects attention. Too many crises across the continent remain in the shallow, ignored because they don't make headlines or because they are not seen as immediate strategic interest to international parties. Christine Hulls, the NRC's head of advocacy in West and Central Africa, told Al Jazeera. This is the other thing I need to add to this as well. It's not just that, right? A lot of the mainstream media doesn't talk about a lot about these because they're not really good clickbait. It's not really like a news channel is supposed to be providing you news, right? But they decide what news to put on for you to see, right? So while yes, of course, what's happening in Africa is important, does that get as many views as, I don't know, a stabbing that's been taking place in your own country, for example, or a politician from in the UK that's about to, or a British politician that's about to speak? You know, what they constitute as primary news, and obviously the own basically British media are going to cover British media are going to cover British news, obviously, but how much of that they actually go out of their way to cover news outside of that? I mean, they'll talk about Europe, they'll talk about America, they'll talk about certain parts of the world, but how much do they actually talk about Africa? It's little to none. And I think if the BBC had not been defunded for a long, long time, you know, the BBC World Service, I think that would highlight quite a bit more as well. But we know where the BBC has been going in terms of its funding as well. Now, I can't say enough. I can't speak too much about America's media and how much they cover of the world. I would say probably the New York Times does a fair bit, but I don't think they cover in terms of Africa as much. Obviously, Sudan is talked more than other nations because of how bad things is in Sudan, but it's still terrible what's happening in these other countries. But again, they just don't. It's not good clickbait, you know. So Vicky said it was happening in the last room too. It is better now. No worries. So crises that knock on Europe's door, as happened in 2015 with mass immigration, tends to receive the greatest media attention, while those far away remain not only out of sight but also out of mind, Hugh has said. So which are the most neglected African emergencies? So the first one here is Cameroon. The West Central African nation tops the list as the world's most neglected crisis in 2024. In an English-speaking northeast and northwest regions of Cameroon, a protracted civil war which began in 2017 is continuing. That year, thousands took to the streets to protest what is happening in the appointment of French-speaking judges, and in general, alleged discrimination from Francophone majority government. Heavy crackdowns to suppress the protests soon saw armed groups springing up, declaring independence. The government in Yaoundé, in turn, declared war. Both the rebels and government forces have targeted civilians. Hundreds have died, and thousands are more displaced internally and have fled to neighbouring Nigeria. The violence there is largely ignored because it's not a direct threat to the central government. Beverly Odgers, a security analyst with the UK's based intelligence firm Control Risk, told Al Jazeera, adding that little has been done to negotiate peace. There was a feeling initially that some of the succession leaders were trying to lobby Donald Trump to support their cause, but they've just not received any attention. Yeah, how often have I covered this one? For example, I you know, shame on me. When there's so much news out there, it's very hard to do so. But yeah, people are continuously suffering in Cameroon there, and that's just one of many countries, obviously. So meanwhile, in the northern Lake Chad Bastien district, also connected to Nigeria, violence by the armed group the Boko Haram has continued for years, displacing thousands. A US-backed joint force in the Lake Chad Bastien countries has largely collapsed since the military government in Niger and Chad pulled out, leaving Cameroon, Nigeria, and Bern. Washington's shrinking of security presence and operations in African nations is likely to further destabilize the arrangement. And what do you think? And how do you think Trump cares about them? They don't. He would just say, no, pull them all out. It's not our business. Like, he wants to retreat America from the world anyway. And there's no benefit for America, in his mind, for them to be there. So he will just try to pull them out. Cameroon itself hosts refugees fleeing Boko Haram in Nigeria, as well as those from the Central African Republic fleeing fighting between two political groups. Together, some 1.1 million people are internally displaced and 500,000 are refugees. And despite this, the Cameroon displacement crisis was mentioned in fewer than 30,000 articles in English, Spanish, French, and Arabic in 2024. Compared with the Ukraine war, which was mentioned 451,000 articles, according to the NRC, only 45% or 168 million of the $371 million required was raised to fund aid in the various crises, according to the United Nations. The government, too under fire from seemingly indifferences, President Paul Biya, 82, and in power since 1982, is often criticised for spending most of his time away in Switzerland. So the The president, an 82-year-old president, just goes and buggers off to Switzerland all the time. It's not very good, is it? I've spoken about Ethiopia before. The aftershocks of the Tigray war in the country's north in 2020-2022 merged with the new intercommunal fighting in the Omroma and Amarida regions, creating a potent mix of crises which has seen 10 million people pushed out of their homes nationwide. 10 million people displaced, the NRC report noted. The Fango armed group, which claims to represent the interests of the Alamar people, one of Ethiopia's significant ethnic groups, is fighting the federal army, which tried to disarm it after they both fought Tigrayan forces during the war. The Oromo Liberation Group, meanwhile, says it seeks independence from the Oromo people. Ethiopia's largest ethnic group, both groups have met with force by the government in Addis Ababa, which has launched drone strikes. Dozens of civilians have died in the fighting. In addition, droughts and flooding have compounded food shortages, and in the southern Gulf zone, heavy rains caused landslides on July the 21st that killed more than 200 people. The worst such landslides in the country. Yeah, Ethiopia has been one that's been... There was a great video by Real Life Law, I think it was last year, on Ethiopia. It was really quite an eye-opener about just how messed up the country is. It's just very, very... it's very, very difficult because obviously there are so many different religions and tribes from before it was formed into the country it was now. And obviously those tribes and feel a sense of the lands that they are all in are entitled to their own, and trying to keep them all together under one country is very, very difficult, obviously, understandably so. But yeah, it's Ethiopia has gone through a lot, guys. It's gone through quite a lot. Sean Worrell, good to see you there in the chat. Hope you are doing well, and anybody else who's lurking in the chats as well. So in addition, drought and flooding have compounded food shortages. I've always said that, sorry, my apologies. So Mozambique is another one. The southern African country appears on the list for the first time this year. Political upheaval following hotly contested October elections saw protesters who supported the independent opposition candidate, Facilio Munland, shot dead by Mozambican state security. About 400 people died in the violence according to local media tallies. So the opposition candidate was shot dead apparently by state security. 400 people died in the violence that sparked it as well. See, why is a story like this not spoken about? Like, you would think this is quite a significant story, but because it's Mozambique, it's not a country that's worth talking about. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Separately, ongoing attacks by an armed group with affiliations to ISIL, that's ISIS Mozambique, in northern oil-rich Cabo Delgado flared up in 2024. Violence has continued there since 2022 and has seen thousands displaced, while also disrupting a $1 billion oil and gas investment project. And government forces working with regional troops in the Southern African Development Country, the SADC, and Rwandan soldiers were able to push fighters back in 2023. Many have allowed displaced people to return. However, because the fighters are quickly embedded in local communities, the conflict has turned violent again very quickly. Prone to cyclones due to its location in the Indian Ocean, Mozambique was hit by a cyclone Chido, which also devastated the French Indian Ocean territory of Mayotte in December. The storm made landfall in the northern region of Mozambique, which is facing armed conflict. Some 120 people have been killed and about 155,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed. So they've got their own armed conflict to deal with as well. Burkina Faso and Mali. So since 2015, more than 2 million people have been displaced in Burkina Faso because of activists of violent armed groups, like the Jamaat al-Nasir al-Sassam wal-Muslim, the JNIM, in which wants to create a caliphate, and several of these groups now control close to half the country, despite efforts by the military-led government to push them back with support from Russian forces. And the rebels have held civilian suspects of supporting the government forces under siege for more than 2 years, blocking entries and exits, and now nearly 40 towns and cities. Massacres of villages, however, have been blamed on both armed groups and government forces who are accused of attacking civilians perceived to be aiding the fighters. Yeah, this is pretty messed up here. Stephen Banker, good evening, my friend. Good to see you there. Hope you are doing well. And thank you so much for the £2 super chat, Alistair Keir. Good to see you there. Hope you are doing well, my friend. Thank you guys for coming along. Appreciate it. Anybody else lurking in the chats as well. So neighbouring Mali is ranked 4th on the neglected crisis list and faces a similar situation. Analysis OGN attributes shrinking aid to the military-led countries of the West African Shield, including Niger, partly to the hostile stance towards Western powers of their leaders there. All three have cut off Western allies, which previously provided both military and humanitarian aid. In particularly France, their hostilities has extended to humanitarian groups and sometimes perceived as being tied to Western nations, further limiting aid. That's really just to cut them off like that, just because of that connections to Western aid. It's all these wars are so much more deeper than what is being said here. There's so much history because of how tribes were established long before borders and lands were set by Europeans who came in and took all these lands for themselves. It's really our responsibility as Europeans to fix a lot of these countries. It really, really is. Alistair Keir, thank you so much for 5 gifted memberships. Given 5 to Billy Kershaw, Leapskin, Puri, Vendetta, Rosemary, and Satru Hoshi there. Thank you so much for those gifted memberships. And another 5 gifted memberships there. Thank you again for your support, my friend. To Benjamin, Jao, EMZ, Sean Wall, and Jan Koffel there. Thank you so much for your support, my friend. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And good to see you there and everybody else who's here. I really appreciate all your support, guys. These military leaders are focused on economic development and don't even want to be seen as not being able to provide for their people. That makes it very difficult for any donors to approach them or provide help, even for aid agencies to assess what its actual needs are, Olachin has said. So they got a list of other African emergencies as well. So Uganda is another one here. Although the country itself does not face large-scale internal violence, Uganda is listed because it hosts a large number of Arab refugees in Africa, close to 2 million people from neighbouring South Sudan, and the DRC. Shrinking ADNRC warned could escalate friction between local communities and refugees. And this is what tends to happen in. Although there are other African countries that aren't suffering, but what can tend to happen is obviously, and if you know your history in some countries, if enough refugees and enough people go into another country, and they can end up becoming integrated and become part of society there rather than going back to their original country where there's still war-torn conflict, you can end up bringing that conflict and violence to that country just by welcoming in those people. So Uganda could very well, as it says here, friction could escalate because they've got all these people from other countries there for them, there to look after. Mithril, good evening there. Good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, we've talked about them quite a few times, to be fair. Decades of violence saw skewed by of armed groups vying to control the country's rich deposits of minerals, and most recently offences by the rebel M23 group have seen hundreds of thousands displaced in the eastern the DRC between 2024 and early 2025. The outbreak of Mpox in the same region in 2023 contributed to disruption. The African Union and the US are currently leading peace talks between the DRC government and its neighbouring Rwanda, accused of backing M23. They've consistently denied the Rwandan government, that they've supported the M23, but it's been consistently said that they have. Other deadly attacks from groups like the Allied Democratic Forces, the AFD, often go unnoticed. And Somalia, entrenched violence from the Al-Shabaab armed group, which has been active for decades, as well as droughts, continue to displace people in the East African country. It receives dangerously low funding in 2024, the NRC has said. Will Trump's aid cuts further affect these crises? Well, the short answer is yes. US President Donald Trump's sweeping aid cuts after he took office in January, and his decision to dismantle the United States Agency for International Development, the USAID, the agency that distributes it, have prompted fears that humanitarian emergencies could worsen in 2025. I'm just going to say this now. It is going to worsen. It's going to worsen, not just because of the US's reduction in aid, but it's also us as well. And I believe some other nations seem to be doing the same as well. It is going to get worse, I'm afraid, guys. And as the world's biggest aid donor, the US distributed about $70 billion in foreign aid yearly, particularly for healthcare in 2024. The most aid went to Ethiopia, Jordan, the DRC, Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Nigeria, South Sudan, and Syria. With those funds either reduced or halted altogether, aid workers carrying out emergencies on the African continents could worsen. And other major donors are also making cuts, observers warned. In February, the UK's cut for foreign aid by 0.2%, while the Netherlands will slash 4.2 billion euros in aid from 2027. France, Germany, and Belgium, Switzerland, and Sweden have all announced reductions to their aid budgets since. Hugh of the NRC said the African Union must take the lead in resolving the continent's multiple crises through political negotiations. The blog's Peace and Security Council, tasked with anticipating and mitigating conflicts, has previously been criticised for being too slow to act. Yeah, this I agree with what Hugh is saying here. They need to be able to, like, I know it's Europe's fault that the continent of Africa is in the state it's in. I accept that. But the African Union right now it's its best bet of trying to bring some stability to some nations. They need to do something. They need to do something about some of these countries. Or maybe at least start one at a time or something to get some stability. They need to do something because it's the innocent people who continue to suffer. It's the innocent people who continue to die, who have to continuously move from homes to homes or country to country in order to survive. Whether it's war zone, whether it's famine, whether it's the climate, there's always something for a lot of African people, and it's not right. And we look at them and we don't see them as the reality is that because of where they are on the continent, we just don't pay attention to the mainstream media. We just don't pay attention to what's happening here, and it's a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace that we do not cover enough of Africa. I mean, here's the thing that really infuriates me. As you guys know, I do use sometimes African news to cover some things, but even they do a shit job of covering Africa. They don't cover enough news in what's going on in the country. They call themselves African news, but yet they don't but they cover news from outside of Africa, and it's just like, you should be your main focus should be on African stories. And yet there are times I go on there and there's nothing going on. When we know there's things going on all the time. Miffle says if there weren't G7 countries in most of the global south countries and extracting all the wealth for their shareholders, things could improve. Yeah. It's always about money at the end of the day. It always comes back to money at the end of the day. What is urgently needed today isn't just more funding. It's clear political commitments, not only from donors but crucially from the African Union and its member states, Hughes said. Countries, she added, also need to reduce administrative and regulatory barriers that hamper aid workers. Easing those constraints in close collaboration with authorities and the African Union will greatly enhance their efficiencies and improve our collective response, she added. I thought that was a very good piece here by Al Jazeera on so many countries that are really struggling at the moment. Really, really struggling at the moment. And it's tough to talk about, as you guys know. It's very, very hard to talk about, but that is the reality that many of these African nations are in, and we just don't talk enough about them. I was actually looking for a piece on Haiti, but there haven't been a new story on them for a while. So I wanted to cover Haiti, but there is nothing really new to cover, unfortunately, from there. It's just frustrating, guys. It's frustrating. But I talk about these things because it's important for us to know that these things are happening in the world. And I appreciate you guys coming to listen and discuss this with me as well. Really, really important stuff. So I think we need to take a little break here, guys. A bit of a funny video to kind of break sort of things up. We've only got 2 more stories to cover, and then we'll come to the funny memes as well. But I think every now and then we just need some, tech support. Well, not just any tech support. Something called emotional tech support. I don't know if there's a number for these guys, but you might be worth listening to. Or trying them sometime. Next time you have a problem with your printer.
Hello, David. I'm Nathan. I'm your You Matter tech support guy.
Oh, great. A real human. I was expecting a chatbot.
Well, I'm very glad that I've exceeded your expectations. Thank you for your patience and for turning up to this Zoom call today.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I just need the printer to work.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Is it?
Right, so let's try going into your printer settings, shall we?
Okay, yeah, I'm doing that.
Bottom left, that's right. Yes, wonderfully done. Wonderfully done.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes it's okay to feel overwhelmed. We've all looked at that spinning wheel of death at times and thought, is it me?
What? No, I just need the printer to work.
Right, now click on Manage Printers. And remember, David, not everything that's connected is always fully available. You need to make these connections meaningful, yeah?
Yeah, it says offline, and I want it to say online.
Okay, well, I think we need to acknowledge that. So let's say together, out loud, the printer is offline.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that.
Okay, you're not ready. That's fine. There's no reason to rush this. You've had people let you down, haven't you? And I'm sensing you're still damaged by that.
It's a printer, it's not my ex-wife.
Pain is pain, David. It can calcify the heart.
What are you... But I just need it to print stuff.
Okay, so I've got control of your screen, David. I'm not going to cross any boundaries, obviously. But what I've done is I've set your printer as the default device, okay? So press print and let's see what happens when we learn to trust the game.
It's printing. It's printing.
That's not just toner on a page, David. That's healing.
It's a shipping label.
So amazing.
Okay, so, yeah, thanks for that. So, we're done, yeah?
Oh no, David, we've only just begun. The next stage is for me to come round to your place, give you a bit of a cuddle, build a blanket fort, and then explain to you how you can eject your USB devices without having abandonment issues.
Okay, bye.
Hello, David.
Oh. Well, it wasn't a chatbot. I'll put it that way. At least it wasn't a chatbot, guys. I had a dream and a rocket, and I believed it would happen in a dream before that came true, says Sean Wall. I've got to write a CV. I'm dreading it. I can't remember half the jobs I've done. Lol. Yeah, I've got a CV ready to ready if I ever want to. Well, whenever I'm ready to go back to doing other work besides this. At some point, because it is something I'll have to do in the future. Yeah, so I do have the CV saved. Basically, I just need to tinker with it. Is basically what I need to do with it. But yeah, that was emotional tech support, guys. That's from the Exploding Head channels, just for reference, guys, as well. So, but yeah, it's such a good video. Such a good video. I looked at it and I thought, is this going to be really cool? And I was listening to it and I was just laughing. I was laughing my head off. So, yeah, I knew you guys would enjoy that. Oh, thank you, Al-Sakir, for £2 super chat. Pain is pain. Yep, nearly hit the damn printer. Yep, indeed. Yeah, that was a very good video. That was a very, very good video by Exploding Heads there. Very, very good by them. And just in case you don't know, they're the same guys that obviously do the Colin from Portsmouth stuff as well there as well. But don't worry, guys, we've got the funny memes to look forward to as well. So that won't be too far away. We've got 2 more stories to cover here. So thank you guys all for being here. Thank you guys for, if you haven't already, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, guys. It really does help support the channel. So much appreciated. And just a reminder, I'll be back live again tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. with another Good Morning show as well, just for reference. Right, so the next story I've got for you guys is from the New York Times. This is a story that's kind of happened since this morning. Basically, major political crisis has taken place in the Netherlands. So the Dutch government has collapsed over a migration dispute. The populist Guy Wilders withdrew his right-wing party from the ruling coalition, saying partners were stalling plans for the Netherlands' strictest migration policy ever. So it looks like that Wilders was actually, according to some polling, he was actually losing popularity with this coalition that he was having as well. And in the end, he's decided to pull his government out, which has thrown Dutch politics into complete chaos. At the time of this recording, there's still no announcement of when there's going to be an election, because there has to be an election now, because obviously there's no official government because it's collapsed. The coalition has collapsed. So yeah, this is all over immigration as well, guys. This is how messed up it is. You know, immigration is having just as much as an impact here in the Netherlands as it is in the UK. We keep hearing about it in the UK all the time, but it's happening here in the Netherlands, happening in France, happens in Italy. You know, it is a topic of a sensitive topic because it really is hyped up more than anything. No worries, Joe. Hope you had a good day. Good to see you, buddy. Hope you are doing well. But yeah, let's read into this, guys, together. So the governing coalition in the Netherlands collapsed today after the populist leader, Geert Wilders, withdrew his party over a dispute about migration policy, ending a rocky 11-month rule by the country's first far-right government and triggering early elections. The move by Mr. Wilders shows how the debate over unauthorised migration continues to roil European politics a decade after the large-scale influx of people fleeing wars and seeking better economic opportunities to unsettle the region. The coalition's collapse was confirmed by the Prime Minister Dick Schoof, who said he would present his resignation to the King, and he said he would stay on as leader of a caretaker administration without Mr. Wilker's party until elections and the formation of a new government. We think it's unnecessary and irresponsible, Mr. Schoof said of Mr. Wilker's decision. It was not immediately clear when new elections would take place, but they appear unlikely to happen before October. Plunging the country into political uncertainty for at least the rest of the year, Mr. Wilders' party has been dropping it in the Dutch polls lately. That's really bad. So they may not have an election until December. That's really that bad there. Mr. Wilders announced a withdrawal of his Party for Freedom from the four-party coalition on X, saying it was because of his partner's refusal to sign off on a new list of proposals to curb migration. No signatories for our migration plan, he said. The political crisis comes as the Netherlands prepares to host a NATO summit on June the 24th and 25th. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting NATO summit in a country where their government is, where it's nothing but a caretaker government at the moment. Mr. Wilker's party, which has advocated in banning the Quran, closing Islamic schools, and largely halting the acceptance of asylum seekers, won the largest number of seats in November 2023 elections, sending shockwaves through the Dutch political system. Mr. Wilders was able to form a government with three other right-wing parties: the People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, a centre-right party, the Farmers' Citizens Movement, a populist pro-farmer party, and the New Social Contract, after more than 6 months of wrangling. It was the first government to include Mr. Wilders' party, which mainstream parties had previously shunned. Together, the four parties held 88 seats in the 150-seat House of Representatives, a comfortable majority. But in a sign of how uncomfortable their arrangement was, the parties agreed not to name any of their own leaders as Prime Minister. Instead, they settled on Mr. Scholz, a civil servant with no effective office or party affiliation. It was a marriage of convenience, said Jacob Stoker, a professor of leadership and organisational change at the University of Groningen. Despite a decline in further migrant arrivals, anti-migrant sentiment remains strong across Europe, fueling far-right populists, and has brought politicians like Mr. Wilders to power. And efforts to limit unauthorised migration has become more mainstream on the continent, and in Germany on Monday, a Berlin court ruled that the German border police can no longer reject asylum seekers who arrive from neighbouring European Union countries without investigating their claims, dealing a blow to Chancellor Friedrich Merz' attempts to control such migration. Mr. Wilders had aimed to bring the strictest migration policies ever to the Netherlands, something his governing parties had said that they agreed with. And in May 2024, the four parties reached a deal that included the strictest asylum administration policy and the most comprehensive migration control package ever. But Mr. Wilders said that implementation was not going quickly enough. Last week, he said he wanted to add 10 more proposals to the agreement to further curb migration and demand immediate support from his governing partners. Demanding immediate support. Like, come on, mate. You're in a coalition. You have to compromise. The proposals including call for a complete halt to asylum, a temporary stop to family reunions for asylum seekers who had been granted refugee status, and a return of all Syrians who have applied for asylum or were in the Netherlands on temporary visas. The leader of the other coalition parties said that while they did not oppose Mr. Wilders' plans, they wanted to propose them in the House of Representatives that would have taken them longer and would not have guaranteed implementation. And on Tuesday, after an emergency meeting with his coalition partners that lasted barely 20 minutes, Mr. Wilders said he had no choice but to withdraw his party. Dylan Zidagos Zedrides, the leader of the People's Parties for Freedom and Democracy, expressed stiff belief. It's quoted saying, "I am baffled. I'm assuming his voters are too," she said. "I don't think we will get another right-wing majority." Caroline van der Plas and Nicolas van Volders, the leaders of the other two governing parties, called Mr. Weiner's decision irresponsible. "He isn't putting the Netherlands first, he's putting Geert Wilders first," said Mr. Van der Pals, leader of the Pro-Farmer Party, "and I blame him for that." So yeah, Netherlands is in chaos now, all because this sounds like something like this sounds like something that Nigel Farage would do if he was sharing a coalition with like 4 other parties. I could see Nigel Farage being this grumpy over it as well. And it's not like the rest of the parties don't agree with the policies, as it was stated there. It wasn't the case that they didn't want to agree with the policies. It was just he just wanted things done quickly, and it's just like it doesn't work like that. Obviously, it doesn't work like that apparently in Dutch politics. The Netherlands has mechanisms for their cases, just like here, says Jae. Stricter migration policies are also coming here. The equivalent to a conservative right wing is the second force in Parliament here. And the fact that their left keeps screaming at them only makes them more popular. Well, the thing is that they were all they had power. They had power and they've blown it. And now it's a case of we've got to hope that the elections go in a way that benefit those a bit more on the left who are a bit more sympathetic to migrants. At least I hope so. But obviously, they wouldn't have seized power if the Dutch did not believe in them there. So it is, it is worrying times for Portugal. It's worrying times for the Netherlands. It's worrying times for a lot of countries, obviously, with this whole clamping down on migration thing, which is consistently being rung around the roses here as well. So we've got one last story, guys, here. This one is from Asia. So it's not confirmed, this story. It's from Central News Asia. But just before I do, just a reminder, if you guys can help support the Democratic Penguins Republic, help reach the Super Chat goal, even if it's just £1, it does go towards the goal this evening, just to help Pengu support him and the McDonald's Island against the tirade of the Trump administration and the tariffs that are still imposed. They're still being imposed. I thought the tariff war was on pause, but no, they've been put back on recently. So any support for the Democratic Penguins Republic would be greatly appreciated, guys. So thank you for that. Just 1 second there. The left created an unsustainable situation, and instead of addressing the issues, they just ignore people, and people punish them in the elections, says Jae. Yep, that's what happens if they don't listen to the people. That's why the Democrats are sitting on the curve, and I don't see them getting back in right now because they're not listening to people. Stephen Baker said, just done a Wichikoff live today. It was very interesting. Oh, good. I hope she had a good live stream. Hope she had a very good live stream for that. Yeah, definitely need to catch Wichikoff whenever I possibly can there as well. So this is from Central News Asia. So Lee Jae-myung is on course to win South Korea's presidency by a landslide. Now, obviously, I don't know too much about him, and it's still not confirmed yet, but this is the situation with regards to the polling when it comes to the next South Korean president. And obviously, there's a lot of pressure on it. And obviously, the history of it has not been very good for as we guys know, we've looked at the history of previous South Korean presidents. It's been quite bad. It has been quite bad, to be fair, guys. So let me read a bit more into this for us. So centre-left Lee Jae-myung was set on Tuesday, that's set today, to win South Korea's presidential election by a landslide, capping months of political chaos in a vote which drew the highest turnout in nearly 3 decades. So 6 months to the day after the ex-president Yoon Slee-cheol plunged the country into crisis with his disastrous declaration of martial law, all 3 major broadcasters projected Lee as a likely winner after 11 p.m. With 37% of the votes counted, Lee of the left-leaning Democratic Party leads with 48.75%, followed by challenger Kim Mung-sol of the Conservative People's Power Party with 42.92%. An earlier exit poll by the 3 major broadcasters also projected Lee winning 51.7% of the vote there. So obviously there is still a lot of just before I get share my thoughts there. Thank you, Alistair Keir, for the £1 super chats there. That should have taken it over the mark. I don't know why it hasn't. That should have taken it over the mark there. Thank you so much for the 3 separate £1 super chats. I don't know why it's not hit the goal, because I'm pretty sure it should have been 5 out of 5 there, but I don't know why it hasn't. But thank you for those super chats, my friend. Much appreciated there. But even when the previous South Korean president did what he did, he still had his supporters, he still had his backers, not just from some of those within his party, but also some even those voters out there. So just even with him declaring martial law and causing upheaval and chaos within South Korean politics, there were still people backing him, still people supporting him. There's still many people who feel aggrieved there with him being ousted. And unfortunately, timer ran out, I think. Yeah, no worries, it's fine. It's all good, Alistair Keir. I appreciate your support nonetheless. It's all good. Thank you anyway. Yeah, I should have set it to 2 hours. That's my bad. But yeah, the politics in South Korea is. I really hope whoever the president is, if it is going to be centre left Jae-myung, I hope I pronounced his name right. I really hope that he can help bring some unity. Like, I just hope that's the main thing that I kind of want from this. Someone who's not going to play about with the powers that they're going to be presided on them. So voter turnout was 79.4%, the highest since 1997. That's very good. So right there, that's very good. Obviously, we know in Asia, Asian countries are more inclined to vote, and they're bit more paying attention to politics, I think, than it is here. But yeah, 79.4% there. That's a very good turnout. Hundreds of Lee supporters broke into cheers outside the National Assembly as party officials watching from inside the parliament started a chant of Lee Jae-myung as the exit poll results were announced. For weeks, major polls had put Lee well ahead of Kim Leung's Labour minister, who struggled with party infighting and failed to convince a third-party candidate to unify and avoid splitting the right-wing vote. After months of turmoil and a revolving door of lame duck acting leaders, many South Koreans said they were eager for the country to move forward. And yeah, that's the thing. They want to put this chapter behind them. That's definitely the thing they want. I hope the next president will create an atmosphere of peace and unity rather than ideological warfare, to cab driver Charles Lang-wook, who's 68, told AFP as he cast his ballot. Nong Min-young, 20, who has been protesting in the streets since Jung declared martial law, told AFP she was relieved at the exit poll projection. Quote, "It's been a tough ride. I'm happy because it feels like we seized the opportunity as so many people have fought over the past 6 months." South Korea's next leader will take office almost immediately, as soon as the National Election Commission finishes counting the votes and validates the result, likely early Wednesday. He will face a budging in trade, including global trade vicissitudes, chafing the export division economy, some of the world's lowest birth rates, and an embroiled North Korean rapidly expanding its arsenal. But the fallout from Jung's martial law declaration, which has left South Korea effectively leaderless for the first months of US President Donald Trump's tumultuous second term, was the decisive factor in the election, experts said. The vote was largely viewed as a referendum on the previous administration. Kang Hyu-young, a political science professor at the Songmyung Women's University, told AFP. Yeah, it's, as Max likes to say, it's always on the incumbent. It's the one that suffers, isn't it? It's always on the incumbent there, as he says. Damon, it's good to see you there. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Young's impeachment over his martial law bid, which saw armed soldiers deployed to Parliament, made him the second straight Conservative president to be stripped off office after Park Geun-hye in 2017. So Lee's victory signals that the Korean public reject illiberal and undemocratic measures such as martial law. Kim Kwok-shin, a socialist professor at Stanford University, told AFP. This moment will likely be remembered as a particular and consequential turning point in South Korea's political history. But Lee's success is due to be much of his rivals' failings, as it is his home strength, said Min-sing Koo, a postdoctoral researcher at the Williams and Merrill Global Research Institute. This sounds exactly like the Labour government, how they won the general election last year, because it was a case of we didn't vote Labour because we wanted Labour, people voted Labour because they wanted the Conservatives gone. And this sounds like the same thing here. They voted for the centre-left president, not because that they preferred him. I mean, some did, but possibly because they just had an outright rejection of the party that was in power and that put him there in the first place. I think that's pretty fair to say there, guys. So Lee has a criminal record and was involved in several political and personal scandals, which made him deeply unpopular among many voters in the 2022 presidential election, Koo said, referring to Lee's unsuccessful run for top office, where he lost to Yoon by a narrow margin. His rise to the presidency is a reflection of deep political turmoil South Korea has been experiencing. South Korean presidents serve a single 5-year term. Yeah, so they can't run again. They can only run for 5 years. But as we've seen from the history of the presidencies, they don't seem to walk out. There's always a case of either they lose their life or they are ousted by crime or something. There's always something, according to the history of South Korean presidents, there's always seems to be something going to go wrong. And I imagine that something may go wrong to this one, despite the fact that this is a center-left president potentially coming in. Ballot counting stations swung into action after polls closed at 8 p.m. AFP reporters saw with boxes of ballots arriving at Seoul National University Gymnasium in Gwanik-gol district. On election day, Seoul streets were as peaceful as people made most of the good weather and a public holiday, but police issued highest levels of alert and deployed thousands of officers to ensure the election inauguration Wednesday proceeds smoothly. Yep, they need to have that just in case. Lee, who survived an assassination attempt last year, has been campaigning in a bulletproof vest and delivering speeches behind a glass protective shield. Oh my god. Is this the same Lee that could win as well? Wow. Wow, there's some people who want him dead. That's I did say, guys, the South Korean presidency role. I don't think you walk out of it, to be fair. Yeah, I really like. I just want to check actually again. South Korean president histories again. I just want to. Oh, there we go. There we go. The scandalous history of South Korean presidents. So yeah, there's a scandalous history. So one was forced into exile in 1960. Jae-myung Ri, 3 decades ago, was a pro-independent activist against Japanese rule. Assassinated by a close aide was the next one. Yeah, I'll just show you guys here from the. Hold on, let me just show you here from the BBC. We'll have a look just before we go to the funny memes here. So yeah, prisons, exile, and impeachment. The scandalous history of South Korean presidents. So yeah, the first one was forced into exile. But that was back in the 1960s, of course. Accused him of rigging the vote and escalating student-led violence-led protests. He left the country for Hawaii in May, where he died in 1965. Assassinated by a close aide, military leader Jae-myung in a coup in 1961 and later became president. Yeah, born in a poor rural family. Yep, so yeah, he was overthrown there. 1979 there. Jailed for treason, coup, and a massacre there in 1980. Military commander Chang Ding-hyun gained power in 1980. He presided over a brutal military crackdown. Yeah, he survived assassination. He tried to survive assassination attempt. Attack killed 21 people in 1998. Chang picked up the comrades, also former general. Yeah, convicted, roles and cause of the Gaza massacre, defended the coup while on trial. Chang said he would take some action. Chang was handed a death sentence. He was later committed to life imprisonment, while 17 life imprisonment. Yeah. So yeah, another one, treason, coup, massacre. And there. Terrible one here. He took his own life during a bribery probe here. This one here. So yeah, Roh Moo-hyung here committed suicide, unfortunately, here. In 2002, he became the president. After leaving office in 2007, he returned to his hometown in southeastern. He ran a duck forever. He took his own life 14 months later. Corrupt investigation closing on allegations. He accepted £6 million in bribes there. So, although it wasn't exactly him as president, clearly his time as president obviously affected him there. Next one, jail for corruption. Park Geun-hye was South Korea's first female president, but of course there had to be a scandal. Elected in 1992, elected mayor there later, won the election landslide 2007, led the country through global financial crisis and won its bid for the 2018 Winter Olympics. His term ended in 2013 and was succeeded by the first female president, Park Geun-hye, who is the daughter of former assassinated leader Park Jae-myung. The son of Park, 5 years after leading office, Lee too was charged with bribery and later found guilty of creating slash funds for tens of millions of dollars, taking bribes from various sources, including Samsung. So yeah, do not ever think like if you're taking the role of South Korean president, like it may sound good on paper, guys, but yeah, it's probably not a good idea, guys. It's probably not a good idea. Just a suggestion. I know it sounds like a Republican in the US, but the fact that a lack of investment in infrastructure, housing, and unregulated immigration has caused actual issues, and everybody knew and pointed it out. And while people complained during the elections, the left chose to ignore people, and people ignored them. Oh yeah, that was that was on the topic on the Netherlands. Force more austerity policies, and they will certainly do it. But as I said, this is a consequence of the poor left politics that have set chaos on parts of the country. Zhao says there as well. South Korean president is a risky job. Yep, there is a high percentage chance you are doomed if you get that get it. You know, but there have been one or two where they've actually served time and they managed to get out and leave with some dignity before something terrible happens to them. So I don't know. We'll see who it declares is, and we'll see how they do. Anyways, guys. So we've come to the part which is the main reason why everybody comes and watches the Snowflake Corner. It's not for the news. No, guys, it's not for the funny video in between. No, it is for the funny memes. I have 5 funny memes for you guys, and I know you guys are buzzing with excitement for them. If only number 3 could be here to watch these as well, because I know how much he enjoys them as well. So let's find out what 5 funny memes we've got for you guys today. We are now flying over 20,000 feet. If you just look to your left, you'll see 10,000 on the left of the flight. And if you look to your right, you'll see another 10,000 feet on the right-hand side. I've got my reasons. Why did the chicken cross the road, guys? Because it got its reasons. That's why. When someone tells you to stop being an asshole. No. Love that cat face. Client's requirement. Client's budget. It works. He's got the pose. He's got the pose. He's got the pose. And finally, when you can't afford to fix it right. That is brilliant. Can't afford to fix the dent in my car, so I'll turn it into a cartoon thing. Brilliant. I did tell you the funny memes would be good this time, guys. I did tell you they'd be good, B. I told you. So there are your funny memes this week, guys, on the Snowflake Corner. So I hope you guys enjoyed those ones there. The feet one was brilliant. Yeah, I laughed when I saw the feet one there. Like 20,000 feet. Literally, there you go, guys. There's 20,000 feet. What do you expect there? So yeah, that was a good ones there. So hopefully, yeah, last week's funny memes were not as good as these ones. Yeah, so hopefully I can find them again. So normally I should look on Reddit or Facebook for funny memes on there. I don't know. Sometimes I will try Instagram or Twitter, but they're not as reliable. But Reddit seems to be a good place where I seem to find good funny memes, in case anyone's curious of where I get them from there, just out of curiosity. So, guys, I want to say, One Angry Pagan, good to see you there, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Just a reminder, myself and One Angry Pagan, in a couple of weeks' time, Thursday the 19th, we'll be doing our usual EcoFlakes show, so join us for that as well. And before I go, guys, one last thing. Tomorrow will not be the Snowflake Watch. That will be on Thursday night. Mental health live stream, guys. It is obviously very, very important. It's been a couple of months since we've done a mental health live stream. If you can join me for it, it'd be greatly appreciated. Tomorrow at 8 p.m, it'd be greatly appreciated. I have 3 live streams to do tomorrow. Of course, the Good Morning Show, Prime Minister's Questions, and then the mental health live stream. If you guys can join me for that, it'd be greatly appreciated. Feel free to open up, talk about anything you want there on the chat. Don't have to talk about politics at all. just talk about how things are going, if things are feeling shit or whatever, or if you're feeling pretty solid. Talk about anything you want there on the mental health live stream. So join me tomorrow at 8 p.m. for that. Everyone is welcome for that. Okay. So I want to thank you guys all for coming along. Thank you guys for all your comments. Thank you, Alistair, for the gifted memberships and the super chats. Literally the first 5 minutes of this live stream, there was no one watching. So yeah, it's very much appreciated. Everyone comes at the end here. I really appreciate all you guys coming along. I really, really do. So if you can, I don't know if Graham Hughes is doing Geoscopes at 7:30 on Politics Social with Bowler Hatman. If you want to go and check him out at that time, feel free to do so. I will be in the chat for Max Robespierre's live stream a bit later on at 8:30 as well. So do check out his live stream as well, and the content he stuff does great stuff there if you're not a subscriber to Max Robespierre as well. But yeah, thank you guys all for coming along. Thank you guys for all your comments. Pingu wants to say thank you guys for your support as well. Much appreciated as well. Yep, 8 p.m. mental health, guys. Yep, 8 p.m., guys. Much appreciated. So, yep, thanks guys all so much for watching. And if you haven't already, hit the like button, share, subscribe, check out Rumble and Patreon for exclusive content. Reminder, very powerful video dropping tomorrow at 12 p.m. on Rumble. One of the most difficult videos I've ever had to record. I will try to post it on the community tab when it comes available here. But if you can check it out, please do. It's one of the hardest videos I've ever recorded about the famine inside Gaza. It was brutal, and I really would appreciate people if they can go out their way to watch it. It really would mean a lot there. So thank you guys all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.